Well, hey everybody. I guess this is where I'm going to start my series. I decided I would take some better quality video and not do it off the cuff. And I actually wrote a script for this, so I'll actually try. So I decided I would start this series on reef lighting, which I feel that reef lighting is one of those topics that's the most divisive and most confusing when it comes to to the new hobbyist getting into this hobby. Uh, and it doesn't need to be that way. It's just gotten over the years uh, so confusing, and it shouldn't be that way. So I think the best place to start and concern with to lighting would be to where corals, are living in the wild. So that's of course in the ocean, and what they're utilizing when it comes to light. So corals are a animal that has a symbiotic relationship with zooxanthellae, which are a type of algae that it cohabitates within their tissues. And this algae, these algal cells, will use the light as a plant would or any algae and basically give macromolecules and sugar to the coral in which it can feed on. Because where most reefs are located, there's not a lot drifting through the water for these invertebrates to feed on. So these algal cells within the tissues of the coral utilize the visual light spectrum as well as the ultraviolet light. And you may know the visual light spectrum as Roy G. Biv. Now, red being the lowest energy is filtered out first in the water column. And as you go deeper, the more blue and violet is the light that reaches the deepest into the water column. So you may hear that you're only supposed to use blue light in your reef tank, and if you use reds, you'll just grow algae. That means a whole nother problem. And this is kind of partly true, partly not. Yes, corals use blue light, but there are corals that live at 2 feet that are the same species that live at 60 feet, and they're receiving what they can get and using what they can get. So the corals at 2 feet are using the reds and the blues, and they might look more dull, but they're using it. Whereas the corals that live super deep might be more bright or better colored, but they're only being exposed to the blues and the violets that can actually reach them. So, what type of lights can you use in your reef or your home aquarium? Well, there are 3 main types that are on the market right now. You can find T5s, you can find metal halides, and you can also find LEDs. Now, by far the most variable, possibly budget-friendly, and newest would be the LEDs. They have a great reputation for giving that color pop to the corals, especially when it comes to the heavy blues and actinics. But they don't have the reputation that metal halides and T5s do when it comes to coral growth. Now, that also might be a consequence of using a cheaper LED or a lower watt LED, but the metal halides and the T5s are definitely proven when it comes to growing corals. So the other older 2 that are also available on the market are the T5s and the metal halides. Now, I don't have experience with metal halides, so I won't talk about them much, but they look more like an incandescent bulb, but the current will run through a gas, which will, halogen gas, which will produce the color spectrum that you're looking at, or halogen salt, I should say. The T5s, on the other hand, are a long tube. You've seen them. They look like T8s and T12s, but they are much more efficient. And they have a phosphor that will transform that UV light produced into the color spectrum that you're looking at. So the reason why I still think that metal halides and T5s might have an advantage on growing corals is the prevalence of hybrid systems, which you utilize LEDs and these older technologies, either T5 or metal halide. But I also got the chance to see how Disney World at the Living Seas grows out massive colonies of coral for their display tanks. And they're still using metal halides and T5s, to my surprise, to grow out all varieties of different corals so they can stock these tanks up pretty quick. So this begs the question, what should your tank look like? Well, that's largely to your preference. Corals will grow in a variety of lights that you give them. In the old days, we had 6,500 Kelvin bulbs, which closely mimic the sun's output and give a very kind of a yellowish, washed out appearance to your corals. Had a lot of red light in it. And then as we got more blue light by cutting out the red light, we progressed to 10,000 Kelvin, 14,000 Kelvin, and 20,000 Kelvin bulbs, and T5s and metal halides. But to really achieve that extremely blue look, that came from LEDs. And there's a beauty to it, but I'm still in the camp of I still like the 10,000 Kelvin to 14,000 Kelvin look. So just to give an overview of what I use, I run 2 eBay knockoff lights. I believe they're called Popular Grow. They were near $80 a piece. I grabbed one originally for my 55 gallon, added a second, and that lit that tank up just fine. Granted, you'll want to raise these lights above the tank. If you have them right on top, they're not going to blend well, and you'll see individual colors bleeding through. So, as I got a 75 gallon, I realized these 2 things were doing fine. They were providing good color, but not the growth I wanted. I wanted rapid growth in this tank to fill it in. So I added in one single Sun Blaster fixture for a T5 and put in an ATI Coral Plus bulb. And this has been quite the bulb to use. It gives about the same color spectrum, but I'm hoping it'll give better growth. So we shall see. So anyway, guys, I hope this provided a decent look into coral lighting. I hope my videos will get better. I'll probably redo this in some years, but thank you guys for watching.